Welcome back to Everyday Behavior. During this series, we are talking about returning back to school after COVID. Now, last year, the school year looked different for every child. Some kids were in face-to-face school. Some kids were on an A/B schedule. Some kids, their parents chose to homeschool. And some kids, the school was completely virtual for the whole district all year. So after COVID, everything looked a lot different for all of the kids. And so everybody's coming in with kind of a different history. Whereas before, every year when kids came back to school, they all kind of had the same history with school, or the large majority had some kind of consistency. However, this year it may look different for every one of the kids. And so how can you prepare kids, whether that's your own children that you're sending off to school, or it's someone else's child that you're receiving into your classroom, for what this school year might look like this year? And how can you help them with the fears that they may be facing, whether that's returning after a year being gone? Because some of the kids, the last time they were in the classroom was spring break of 2020. And so when you're looking at returning to the classroom, there are several things we're going to talk about in this series. We're going to talk about how to set clear expectations. How can you set expectations that allow the kids to have some sort of predictability to their day, to the classroom, and to the school environment? So parents, for you at home, that's how can you make things predictable prior to and following school? And in this school, classrooms, teachers, administrators, how can you make the day predictable within the school environment? You want to establish those consistent routines, whether that's the morning routine and the evening routine, or that's the coming into the classroom, the lunch routine, the recess routine, the math routine, the reading block routine. How can you establish those consistent routines? You're going to want to take a little bit of extra time this year to really work on building those relationships with your students. The stronger the relationship is between you and the student, or between your child and their teacher, the less anxiety they will have about the classroom. And so how can you take that extra time to build those relationships? When you're looking at easing routines or easing anxiety, all of these things such as routines, consistency, but the more things that you can make visual, the less anxiety you have. So think about a road. When you're driving down the road, if they don't have lines, maybe it's under construction and they don't have lines on the road, or the lines aren't clearly marked, how much anxiety do you feel about the cars next to you, knowing where they're supposed to be, knowing where you're supposed to be, knowing what the speed limit is, and what the rules and expectations are? So visual supports really help us to predict the behavior of other people, but also to know what the expectations are for us and to adjust to our behavior. So using visuals within your classroom really helps to ease that anxiety as well. You may need to work on teaching some coping strategies. Some kids may find themselves without coping strategies, or have more anxiety than they've ever had in the past, or maybe they haven't applied the coping strategies that they learned over the last year to the school environment. And so coping strategies are really just replacement behaviors. You may want to go back and watch one of our previous video series on replacement behaviors and function of behavior. But coping strategies are replacement behavior for escape or avoidant maintained behavior. And so those are things like verbally asking for a break, having non-contingent or scheduled breaks throughout the day, or having other strategies rather than crying or complaining of headaches, stomach pain, or school refusal to approach or cope with that anxiety that they might be feeling. And the last thing that we're going to talk about during this series is our social skills. So many kids missed social opportunities during the last year, whether that was through quarantines or not having access to some of the extracurricular activities that they had, or being in the classroom. A lot of our kids missed opportunities to practice social skills with their peers, with less familiar adults. And so you may need to provide some remediation or explicit instruction to catch kids up to what they may have missed over the past year. And so all of those are things that we're going to talk about in this series. I hope that you find this series to be very timely as we are approaching this upcoming school year. Have an excellent day, and we look forward to seeing you throughout the series.